Tapestry weaves together the threads of our struggles and doubts, curiosities, our faith, our joys and hopes to create meaningful conversations that matter. You know those late night conversations that go unexpectedly deep? That's what we want to capture with the Tapestry podcast. And we want everyone to jump in the conversation. Because when we are heard and valued, we can begin to believe we are loved. Welcome to the Tapestry podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Tapestry podcast. I am here with my friends.
I'm Haleigh.
Mwangi, how you doing?
And my name is Mike, and we have been talking about this question, what do I owe you? This kind of question about transaction that you might imagine from like, somebody gave you something and you're like, oh, what do I owe you? And really using that question as a jumping off point to talk about bigger things in society. Like, what do we owe each other as human people, as a species? And so we started in the first episode on this subject about talking about this big umbrella of society and what that even means and what it means to be in connection with each other, to be social creatures, not like hermits who live on a mountain. And then in the episode just before this, we talked about kind of how and why we resist obligation and like the things that make us not want to be obligated to other people. And today on this episode, we're going to talk about the intersection of kind of obligation and our spirituality. Like, what is it that our faith traditions and also kind of like religions in the world have told us or taught us or inform us about obligation, what it means to be in society, to live together. And so, yeah, let's just jump right in. And yeah, what are some things about living in society that also kind of connect with spirituality and faith?
Right now, I feel like, in the United States at least, in our little bubble in Colorado, well, not the bubble of Colorado, it's the whole United States, there's kind of this like, I don't know how to word what I want to say, but there is this pull or this almost like tug of war, I guess, between different Christianities. And I mean this in, like, all three of us come from a Christian background. That's how we know each other. But you have these Christian nationalists that are very loud and are saying things like the sin of empathy and all of those things. And they are running society at the moment. And at least our society, they are in charge.
Or parts of it, for sure, yeah.
Yeah. They are in power and controlling things as they would like to. And so there's this dissonance between that and then other people. I also work in ministry. If you're new to the podcast, Mike and I both work in ministry. Mike is what is your job title again? I know it's student ministries.
Yeah. So youth pastor.
Youth pastor. I don't want to disrespect your title, man. That's all.
I'm the director of student ministries in Tapestry at Broomfield UMC.
Yes, I am. I'm an AV tech, which is a little bit more background side of ministry, but I am still very heavily involved in worship. Know a lot of people. I have a smaller congregation than Mike does, so I'm very in touch with the people there. And like my church, very much so, is very social justice oriented. We're very service oriented. That's in the identity of that place. And so, and can I call it fact that is in line with the teachings of Jesus?
I would call that fact.
I would call that fact.
If you read the Gospels anyway.
Yeah. If you take the words out of Jesus' mouth, that we are called to be servants of other people. Yep. We are called to owe, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Literally. Yeah.
to be
That.
friends with and advocates for the underrepresented. And so, in terms of the question of like, what does spirituality have to do with it, or what does religion have to do with it? For me, everything. And I'm not even. I don't know if I think I probably said this. I'm not the most religious person in the whole world. I'm not like a. I don't know. I don't quote the Bible a lot. The whole spiritual side is a little bit more iffy for me, like the God part. But for me, like, I'll follow. Like the teachings of Jesus are what grounds me in religion. And so to have people in society, controlling society, running society, who call themselves the same thing that I would call myself, which is, I guess, Christian or a follower of Jesus, and then immediately disrespect, honestly, the teachings of Jesus and the words of Jesus. To say that it's a sin to have empathy, or that some people just are not worthy of kindness or generosity. That's insane to me.
It seems antithetical to the teachings of Jesus as I read them. Empathy, I think is extremely important, and I think maybe compassion isn't exactly the same thing as empathy, but I think they're connected. And I don't think that anyone could argue that Jesus didn't have compassion unless you just decide to not read the Gospels.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, it literally says Jesus had compassion on them.
Yeah.
Which the root of that compassion, passion means to suffer, and calm is like with. It's like, so the idea is to suffer with someone. To have compassion is to actually like enter into their suffering, which is the same idea as empathy. Yeah.
I didn't know that at all.
Oh, we're doing Bible study tonight.
got a real pastor up in here.
So, yeah, to have somebody say that empathy is a sin or something like that, I'm like, man, you have lost the script, man.
The quote is to commit the sin of empathy. Yeah, just because a bishop prayed for queer people. To have mercy on them, by the way.
Yeah.
Not even to love them, just to have mercy.
Mercy is so weak.
Yeah.
You can't be compassionate and then gain power.
Ooh.
Right?
It is hard.
In general, right? So you can't be like, I'm out there being compassionate, yet at the same time ascend in power.
Yeah.
It's quite the opposite. It's to ascend in power, essentially sometimes you're skewing something to your narrative, and doing it in a way that your loyal followers who feel like they owe you are the ones who feel like nobody's being compassionate to them, right? So they're the victims now. That's the point.
Yes. Yep.
You're giving compassion to all these other people. Where's mine?
Yep.
Right?
Therefore, compassion is bad.
Yeah.
Empathy is bad. Because,
what the heck, right? Like, where's mine? Where's my compassion? Even though you're
Where's
like,
my peace?
what exactly you're suffering? But like, that's the,
Say louder, Mwangi.
right?
It's okay.
That's the thing. So like, what? Okay, fine.
for everybody
You
in
want
the back.
compassion? What exactly? Right? But right. So some of these leaders are able to tune into that and say like, oh yeah, like I'm going to make you feel like the world is against you and the only person that can solve your problem is me. Right? And therefore I'm going to ask you to, pledge loyalty or give me this or like whatever, and I will deliver you to the promised land because these are the people they're there. Apparently these other people are already in the promised land, but you're not, but I'm going to get you there. When it's like, hold up, wait a minute. Like, what are you talking about? I think last Mike, you brought up like disabled folks, right? Somebody who's disabled, right? And how some people may see that as a drain in society and why do we owe them and things like that. Like, in what situation do you say providing services to those people is somehow they're in the promised land and they're banking, whatever you want to call it, and somehow they're drained in society. That is absolutely not true. But here's the thing, right? So if we're talking about spirituality, Christian or not, it's open to interpretation, like in some sense, right? Yeah. So yes, Haleigh, you said, yes, that's the truth. That's a fact. But those facts are open to, maybe the wrong word is interpretation, but if it's a fact, I can still take that fact and turn it to use my message and turn that fact to get a thing, right?
What does fact matter to people who spin it anyway? Yeah,
and especially if I'm not looking for, here's the thing. If I'm a follower of Mike Orr and I'm not looking for facts, I just want like...
Right, yeah.
It's not a good idea.
Right?
Just want, you want stuff that supports Mike.
I'm not asking for facts. I just need you to pump me up.
Yeah.
Make me feel good. Sure. Make sure that you've defined some enemy. Going back to, we already mentioned 1984, war with Eurasia. There's somebody out there that hates you. I'm the only one that can protect you.
It's going to get you.
They really hate you. You never met them. You have no idea how they look like. Don't even know where that Eurasia is in the map. But the fact is, they just hate you, right? And so where does spirituality fit in this? It does fit, absolutely, right? It's where, in a normal sense, you'd go back to ground yourself. But if you were to look in our, information and look things up, there's a lot of noise. Where, right, you have a leader in the country that talks about a version of Christianity that you must start with only yourself and your family before you think of other people, which is so counter. And here's the fact, I'm going to tell you right now.
This is not what Jesus said.
But here's the thing. If a prominent person like that says something like that, and they have a microphone that amplifies that message, people will hear that and say, right? Yeah, that sounds right. Because you see, if I don't, because these other people are caring about people, all these other people, and nobody's caring about my family. But it's not true, and it doesn't really resonate.
And like you said in that first episode, Mwangi, that like we as people like to be pumped up, right? So if someone is amplifying a message that says that I'm important, you best believe I think I'm important. And to kind of tie into like what you're talking about earlier, and that was that like something I've noticed, and that is most likely intentional, is that in a lot of these like Christian nationalists or like this certain approach to, I'm going to call it an approach to Christianity, I guess.
Sure. Yeah.
It can take a spin where people can create themselves as the savior of other people, like you were saying, right? But very much so, and we talked about this in the first season, for young boys, like teenage boys, they're going into this alt-right pipeline. And we're seeing this, I think, and we're seeing this in some youth at my church, which is even crazier, right? Because they're like in a really progressive Christian space, and they're still falling for some of this. Not falling like it's I don't say it like it's a trick, but it's a trap.
Okay.
Yeah, and we all rebel a little bit, right?
Right, yes. Oh, absolutely. And I'm sure you deal with this to a certain extent. But there's this level of like, where was I going? But
alt-right pipeline.
Yes, thank you. I'm getting there. Got to retrace my steps for a second. Steven, you have some editing to do. And but pretty much like these that these young boys can pretty much deem themselves a savior. Right, Mwangi, you were saying that these leaders are saying that there's an other group that is in the promised land and you are not. And so some of these young boys, like a lot of these like alt-right, Christian speakers, even, the Tate brothers, whatever, is however toxic you get, they pretty much say they blame women, they blame gay people, they blame, everyone who isn't pretty much a white man. And they say, these people are taken from you, and they've been taken from you, and they don't like you. And then for these young boys, it's like, well, oh my gosh, like, what do I do? Like, I'm being attacked right now. And they don't have enough experience to know if that's true or not. So they might as well
Right.
take the word of someone who seems like they're trying to help them. And
Yeah.
so they then, you know, and then they take the usual theology is that there's a certain group of people going to hell, go save them. You are going to heaven if you save these people. So like there's kind of this little loop of like,
But it's not
othering
saving,
people,
right?
and then-
it's not. But the
Right.
narrative doesn't save, right, Haleigh? Because it's more like
right. And
protect
yeah,
yourself.
That's
like,
what I was.
Those people are going to burn in hell. Forget about trying to help
Right.
them not burn.
And
you
there's
know what I'm
there's
saying?
and it feeds that
Yeah.
oppressive loop, right? You can free your conscience by telling them they're going to go to hell, right? Just to let them know.
But you're not going to do anything about it.
Yeah, so it's like you and yourself are kind of this savior figure to let them know that you're good, they're not, and if they fix their ways, they're good. But it gives
You're chosen.
This narrative continuously puts people down and brings, you know, the white man up. In that, like, it gives them not necessarily power just for the sake of it, but it gives them a sense of agency, like a sense of that
But
power. Does that
Yeah,
make
it makes sense. It does elevate, but it does a disservice to them because if it's
Oh,
right,
yeah.
because it's like, oh yes,
Absolutely.
so and so is cheating you. Instead of saying like giving you ideas on how to improve yourself, it's just like no, just hate them. Because if you hate them
Exactly.
enough, these other things will come to you, which is not,
Yeah.
which may be true in some sense, but it's not sustainable.
And it's how the bigger
It's not
people,
sustainable.
right? It's how the bigger people get their, you know, underlings, right? Like, it's how they
Yeah.
get a following.
Because it's about, in that case, power over rather than power with.
Yeah.
And I think maybe you're right, Mwangi. Empathy and compassion, they don't get you power over. But that's not the only kind of power. There's a power alongside of a power where we are a collective and we're collaborative rather than competitive and stepping on somebody else to get higher. So I think it's a different worldview or a way of seeing how things really work or work well. And so if you believe that the only way forward or the way to get what you need is to basically step on other people, or that if it's a zero-sum game where there's only so much in the world and your slice of the pie is only going to be so big unless you take from somebody else's, then yeah, obviously you have to have power over them. Empathy is bad, compassion is bad, and you don't have any obligations to anybody else. But that does not seem to me to be the way of Jesus. When I talk to my Muslim friends, and when I say friends, I have people I know who are Muslim, and then I have one real Muslim friend named Isan, which we have to have on the podcast at some point. And I believe Isan would say the same thing. No, like we are our brother's keeper. We do have obligations to one another. We do have to see each other, whether we are Christian or Muslim, whatever brand of Christian or Buddhist or whatever, or Jewish, that we have to all see each other as one big family. And that is a different message. But it seems to me to be in my experience, a very Christian message. There's a Christian Celtic saying that I came across as I was thinking about all this. It says, "We live in the shelter of each other." And I love that. It's so you can imagine somebody saying it in an Irish accent. I'm not going to try it, but we live in the shelter of each other. That's a different way of looking at it. Like we can't do it without each other. And so whether it's our spirituality that tells us or just our lived experience, like I am probably more self-sufficient in like the backcountry, in like mountain environments than most humans. But I can't survive out there forever. And I can't do it without equipment that somebody else built for me, right? And I can't get there without a car that somebody else built and somebody else fueled. So I guess being honest or more thoughtful about what it means to be connected to one another,
Yeah.
I think it'd be really helpful. And it seems certainly in Judeo-Christian traditions that care for one another, especially for people on the margins, especially for the oppressed, or they put it the outcast, the foreigner in your land, the immigrant, the widow, the orphan, like that is throughout the Old Testament. Like these are the people we have to take care of. And Jesus in his ministry doesn't seem to allow for excluding anyone. Like that is antithetical to the way, I think I've used that word more than once today, to the way that Jesus did ministry.
I agree, but I think the Christian nationalism that Haleigh brings up is it's really key, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're talking to a historian, like in some sense, and say, the societies that cared about the women and the children, they're the ones who conquered the earth, right? We tend to celebrate, right, the military victories, right? The pillaging and the conquering and those things. Then the other stuff will come later, but it's more about those type of conquests are the ones we tend to celebrate in society, right? Less so, which society held up those who were most vulnerable, right? I'm not saying that's not going to change. I'm not saying I don't have hope from the future, things like that. But there's something human in us that really loves that kind of narrative, and what we do is also love to be on the winning side of that, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. And how many of those wars were fueled by religion? Almost all of them.
A lot, right? Fueled by religion, or the opposite, like the banishment of that, right?
Some version of religion,
some version of I mean, or some version of idealism, right? Because you take spirituality and even say, like, what does that mean? How do you find that? But this idealism of what is ideal and what I try to achieve or be part of. But yeah, I don't know, like.
And I didn't mean to cut you off, but when we talk about history, right? I mean, who is usually in charge of societies at those times? And who shapes, like, society shapes how we remember history too. Yeah. So, I mean, how many of those cultures succeed, and yet in our current place right now, we have a lens that doesn't allow us to see them?
I mean, are you talking about...
That's a question for people more educated than me.
No, I think it's a good question because, too, right, Mike, what those societies have done, there's also a retrospective repainting of what happened, right? Right?
Oh, yeah.
So, to your point, so this happened, but then now we talk about, no, this is really hot, right? The conquerors, right? Tell the story. So, like, even then it could be like, no, this is how it really happened. Or, right, you get to retell the story in many different ways. You can go to Europe and see cathedrals and see wonderful art, and that's all you see, right? But if you to question, well, wait a minute, like, how does a church get all this money? and where, and you start asking yourself, well, where are all people invited to be able to worship in this building? And you ask a whole bunch of questions. You start saying, like, wait a minute, but the representation of history also, right, matters.
Where'd all that stuff in the British Museum come
from? Where did that come from? Like,
that's a big thing right now.
Yeah, exactly.
How did it get here? And things like that. So, no, I think this question we've been pondering, right, about owing, it's individual, right? and even as an individual can evolve based on environmental stimuli and things like that and where you're at. And then you can look around on you and say, like, okay, like, people around you, what do they owe you? What do you owe them? If you've been burned, then you're like, nope, right? I don't know nobody, right? Societally, depending on the society you grow up in, some societies will say the society is more supreme over the individual, right? So you may owe the society, right? More so than
definitely.
yourself or even your family.
Yeah.
But again, my hope is like a broader perspective of everybody to see like where they fit in and what we will look, because if you sacrifice for the society, that's not healthy, right? Because then the individual is lost, and there can be some mental health issues that are lost, right? If the opposite is so individual, that doesn't also work, right? Or we ignore a lot of things. So
Yeah. This conversation is going to get interesting when we talk about billionaires, like you brought up last time, Mwangi.
Yeah, it's on the list. I'm going to talk about it. So I came across someone named Sister Simone Campbell, and anybody who's listening, you can just Google "the nun on the bus," and one of the things she talks about is kind of the other side to the coin of civil rights is civil obligations, which I think is a really interesting way to put it. That is, there was a good and useful focus on civil rights, though I think in our country that movement started as civil rights for groups, but then eventually maybe kind of became more focused on civil rights for individuals. And that's, I think, in America, a lot of times how we do it. It's like, well, if the individual has rights, then that expands out to groups. And I don't know if it always ends up working that way. But she talks about how she wonders if the new task in the 21st century is got to be a commitment to civil obligations as a balance to the focus in the previous century on civil rights. The idea that civil obligations are things that we participate in as a commitment to the whole, as a thing that lifts everyone up, and not just you as an individual. And this, to me, is a really interesting idea. And of course, she talks about things like, voting and holding our politicians accountable and things like that. The book that this comes from is from like 2014, so it's before kind of our current political climate kind of really developed.
Whoa, that's pretty cool.
So really interesting that even before kind of 2016, where it feels like a lot of things really changed, there were people talking about how like if we really want to be a society, and in this case in the United States, a country that has the kind of, I guess, patriotism or like love for country that is healthy, that it has to be rooted in community that is taking seriously this idea that we, the people, are the ones who come together to form a more perfect union. And these are all things she talks about, I think, to me, sound really useful and important. Like, if we only focus on the individual rights, then we do end up missing something, which is kind of, I guess, a big part of what I hoped to bring out in this episode. I know you guys hadn't heard any of that stuff before, so I'll give you guys a minute to respond if you want to.
I always have so many thoughts when you guys, like, all three of us tend to talk for stretches, and I always have so many thoughts, like, and then we all develop further away, and I should start writing stuff down, and I haven't learned my lesson. But it really does strike me that was in 2014. Because I do think that the smartest people amongst us saw our current state coming. And they maybe not like a seer or anything, but just like they saw what this kind of disconnect could do. And I don't know. I find that, I don't know, it's almost comforting, I guess.
Yeah.
In that, like, there has been hope even before the downfall.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I agree with all of the above anyway. But, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, hope persists. One of my, I might have told you guys this in maybe a different episodes. From a science fiction perspective, I think one of my favorite books is Dune, right? So the reason I like Dune, and doesn't mean I hate other things, right? It's just, I saw the movie first, and then I saw the movie, and then I was like, I need to read the book. What I love about Dune is, fundamentally, no matter how far out it is in the future, is people are fighting over resources. That has always existed. That is who we are. At the end of the day, if there's a resource, we're going to fight over it, and we'll create societies, and we'll create whatever, right? So I'm not here negating what you're saying, like, Haleigh, around hope, but I think it's also fair to recognize who we are as human beings, that no matter how technologically advanced we are, if there happens to be a resource in far, far, far outer space called the spice, we would go to war. Just like we'll go to war over like territory or oil or forestry, or it doesn't matter, right? Part of this is just, it's in us. The hope is that over time we learn that, but there's something underneath. There's something inside us that talks about, like, wait a minute, like, oh, there's that thing, and if I can conquer that thing, that gives me advantage over my other human beings, and perhaps give me leverage and power and over that. So that's why I just I haven't read the other books after Dune 1, but to me, like, fundamentally, I was like, wow, it's a great story, but it fundamentally is around, like, wow, yeah, like, we're so advanced, but at the end of the day, we're fighting over a natural resource, and that's what it is, right? And so I don't care what time in history you are, that story resonates. So I love that initial book.
I haven't read or seen Dune yet, but I should. I have it on my desk right here. But you should read or watch The Expanse, which is my favorite thing in the world. This poster that's sitting back there somewhere, that's signed by the authors, so it's like my favorite thing.
I've got it on my list. I haven't started
so
yet.
Good. But it kind of dives in the same thing. I'll give you the quick rundown is that there are people living on Earth, Mars, the Moon, and the asteroid belt, and the political tensions between all of those people. And it's very much the same thing of we are fighting over resources, the same oppressive patterns that we always find ourselves in are still here right now. And that one is like, I think it's year like 3000 something. They don't ever give it a date, but like it's an estimated fandom thing. But yeah, I think a lot of science fiction actually almost goes that, maybe not about resources, but down that route of, I think science fiction and fantasy are some of the best ways for us to kind of identify our patterns from like a separate perspective. I love literature. I could make a whole podcast talking about stories in general, but
we share a love of sci-fi as well.
I've been fighting myself the whole time to not bring up The Good Place, but The Good Place, the whole thesis of the show is these 3 episodes that we've been talking about. So if you haven't watched The Good Place, go watch The Good Place. I want to rewatch it right now. But anyway, I think you should. I have nothing else to add other than watch or read The Expanse, and I'll read Dune.
Cool. Well, I might be able to kind of tie us up a little bit, and I think one of the things I've come to at this point in my life, and kind of as I've pondered these kinds of questions, is that the idea of owing someone something else, or having an obligation or a duty to my fellow human or society or whatever, can feel like something really heavy, but it's actually become, rather than like a heavy burden, that this sense of obligation actually has led to a feeling of connection, of of true belonging to each other, that we belong to one another, that, like that Celtic saying, we live in the shelter of each other. And there is a sense for me, and I mentioned in a previous episode, just a couple episodes ago, that I would get to this. There's a sense that I'm not actually my own. So stick with me for a second. What I'm saying is that I'm a product of every person who's ever invested in me, every situation that has ever benefited me, all those things that have led to my development and my progress as a human. So I am not just my own. Hi, Wally. One of the 10 dogs that's in my house just came to say hi. That if I've gained any level of maturity or wisdom, whatever degree I have gained of that, has come from somewhere else, right? That I am a product of these things. So in that way, I feel a sense of obligation, and that it would be selfish of me to hold that back from someone else, right? I do have then this responsibility or obligation or duty to share whatever it is that is of some value in me, however much or however little that turns out to be, with the world. And I think that's true of you, Haleigh, and that's true of you, Mwangi. That's true of you, listener or watcher, viewer. I think that's a better word. Watcher sounds creepier, right? That when we hold ourselves back from each other, then we all miss out. Mm-hmm. And so for me, that's what we owe each other. We owe each other something of ourselves, because we won't get to those next beautiful levels without that. If we think of ourselves as a limited resource, whether that's spice or whatever evil corporations in future sci-fi might have us believe, I think it turns out that there's enough, that there is enough for everyone if we were to share it.
Good words, yeah.
Well, guys, that kind of wraps up this 3-episode series on the question, what do I owe you? Thanks for joining in, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye, everybody. The Tapestry podcast is produced by Stephen Bailey. Original music was scored by Taylor Martin. Our hosts are Haleigh Bird, Mwangi Ndonga, and me, Mike Orr. Special thanks to Lauren Richmond Jr. and Resonate Media. You can learn more about Tapestry and join the conversation on our Discord channel at tapestrytalk.org. Thanks for joining us.